Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Pastor Mike Drop Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Housholder, joined by my co-host, Emily Langpaul.
Hello.
Hi, Emily.
How are you?
I'm good, and I'm excited to talk about some fun things.
Literally fun things.
Literally fun things. We're talking today about why don't Christians have more fun, and we invited two of the most fun people we know.
Yes, we did.
The party people are here.
It's good to have them. We have your lovely wife, Sally. Hi, Sally.
Hello.
Well, hello there. I would never say that to any other guest, but you know, it's a little different. Yeah.
It works. And Mark Brandt, our digital outreach minister.
Hello there.
Hello.
See how I did it differently?
I like it.
Same words, different tone.
So good.
Changes
I've been around
everything.
here too long. It's all
How long have you been here?
23 years in June.
Ooh.
First.
Wow, we were just talking about that you were youth director for Emily's husband.
And for Emily, too.
And for Emily,
That's
too.
true.
Emily.
That's true.
I guess that goes together.
Yep.
Once upon a time.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And now you are doing everything fun. Digital outreach fun.
Outside the walls.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
talk more about
Yeah.
that as we go. And if we want to talk about fun, we got to talk about Sally.
Sally helps with a lot of fun around here. She's also the brains behind our VBS songwriting team with a few others who help and create the vibe of VBS fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, you create the vibe, produce a lot of the fun that happens around here. A lot of the ideas that are really fun that I get
Yes.
credit for, at least half of those have come from my wife. So the good ones. The other half, those are mine.
I don't know.
Well, and VBS was one of the very first things that I experienced at Hope when I started here in the summer of 99.
Yeah, but it's a good way to start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't
Kind
terrible.
of sets the tone.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
always like it when new staff get VBS real quick.
Yes.
'Cause then you can't take yourself too seriously
No.
after that.
Yeah.
So we are talking about why don't Christians have more fun today, but we wanted to start with
Yeah.
sort of we don't need an icebreaker. We all know each other really well, but
Yeah.
maybe kind of a get to know our guests a little better.
Yeah, and get into our topic. Hope has a long history of fun, and we've all helped with planning certain things and seeing the behind the scenes of certain things. Some go right, really, really right, and some go really, really wrong. So whether it's right or wrong, curious to know people's favorite, maybe top memories of events that Hope has done. Things we've tried to pull off that bring a lot of fun.
Ladies first, Sally, what stands out for you? And how long have we been at Hope now? Gosh, since 1993.
Since 93.
So 29 years.
29 years. Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't added that up for a while.
No, me either.
That's
It's gone by
incredible.
fast.
So,
Gone by very quick.
so many things, but what stands out?
Okay, so yeah, there are so many things, but one thing that just cracks me up when I think about it is the one Christmas when Mike Horseman was a reindeer. He was Rudolph, and we actually swung him from the ceiling in the bridge, which
Like
was
back and
our
forth.
worship center. Yes, and Mike decided to not catch him at one point. Like when he came there, he just let him
kept
keep
going.
going.
I thought it was better just to let him swing.
Yeah.
You know,
And it was
more
really
Rudolph-like.
fun.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I think that service, maybe we had motorcycles drive down the center
We did.
aisle also.
Yeah, we've done that twice and with about a 20-year gap in between.
Yeah.
So if you're keeping score, we're about 16 more years away from the next
Getting
motorcycle
close.
run.
Be here before you know it.
If it repeats. That's awesome.
Similarly, I will add that at a VBS skit one time, I think it was an entrance video perhaps or a skit, we had decided that Pastor Mike was going to come down and propel down the baptismal font, but that was not quite safe enough.
And for our listeners who are not see, well, you can't see the baptismal font anyway visually. It described the baptismal font.
Well, I'm trying to guess how high it is. It's very
What do you think?
tall.
Oh, gosh, 50 feet?
50 feet minimum.
Yeah,
at
it's
least,
way
if not
up
more.
there.
Yeah.
Way up
So
there.
instead, making the wise choice, we chose not to put a person on it, but they created a dummy. And I will tell you that behind the scenes, there were staff whose job was to try to figure out how to make this look like Pastor Mike.
They did a creepily good job of it, I thought.
And it all worked until certain limbs started falling apart and things were
Yes.
just
Yeah.
going all over.
Arms falling off, legs, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it wasn't me.
Well, and a funny behind the scenes story about that is they had it propped up in the bathroom to dry.
That's right.
And so people didn't know that, and you'd walk in the bathroom and you'd hear people scream. Like,
I did that.
just
I walked in and I thought somebody was in there.
There you go.
Oh, my gosh. That
that was
great.
funny.
Oh, my goodness.
Mark, what stands out for you?
So we did a building campaign. We've done several, but there was one that was Building Hope for the World, and we decided to go down to the convention center.
Yeah.
Right, downtown
And,
Des Moines.
Yeah, and we wanted a giant inflatable globe. Because why wouldn't you in Building Hope for the World?
Exactly.
I remember that.
Yeah,
it was a big,
Yes,
giant.
It was huge.
Yes.
like 10 feet in diameter.
and we lost it on I-235. Like somebody put it on the top of their car, I think, and it fell off. And they didn't notice.
We lost the world.
Yes,
We lost the world.
The whole world.
They ended up finding it, but it was no longer inflated or in
or
it was
even able to be inflated.
But they're
probably.
calling saying,
Struggling.
"Did you lose your world?"
Yes.
Yeah,
They did.
that
Someone
was-
called. That's so
We-
nice.
those phone calls.
We think we found your world.
Oh my goodness.
Man, so many things. For me, what stands out just top of my mind right now, for whatever reason, was it was an Easter. It was early on, maybe 2 or 3 years in, and we were at the building that is just down the street on Ashworth Road at the time before we moved to this property and built this building here. And it was getting so crowded for Easter, we couldn't fit everybody in the sanctuary anymore. Were you guys, you were...
No, I wasn't here yet.
This story happens to be my family's first time we worshipped at
This
home.
was your first time?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Not the most... Well, that wasn't necessarily us putting our best foot forward for you and your family. But we went into a tent. We thought, well, we're going to have an old-fashioned revival under the tent on Easter. What could be better? What we didn't factor in was the weather. We thought, well, it's spring. It should be getting nicer. And it was cold, and cold wasn't the problem. Wind was the problem. It was just like gale force winds. And so the tent we had became a hazard. It looked like it was going to go airborne, like it was going to launch into orbit.
I've heard there are volunteers holding down.
Yes.
the
There
fort.
was one guy I'd
They
been
were.
inviting to come to Hope for over a year, and he finally showed up wearing a 3-piece suit, real distinguished guy, and strong guy. And he's sitting there, and the pole that was holding the tent down right next to him came undone. And he reaches over, just grabs it, and the rest of the service, he's fighting this
my
pole
goodness.
to hold the tent down for the rest of us. So I'm glad you came back,
yeah,
you and your
me
family,
too.
Emily, if that was your first time.
It was still a success.
Yeah.
But I think people claim, like, I was there, I
know,
was
that's what I
holding
was
the
gonna
tent
say.
pole.
Right.
That's right. It's like our Woodstock experience.
Yes.
You know, there were about
Who was actually
400
there.
people there, but
Yes.
thousands claim to have been.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I
was
think
fun.
it sort of summarizes for us one of the approaches that the four of us know well. And I would hope, I know most people who listen to this podcast aren't a part of our church family, so we don't want to zoom in too much on our own specific congregation. We want to offer these transferable principles. But one of those transferable principles is something I learned from an older pastor at the church I grew up in Chicago. He was goofing around. He was a missionary from China. I mean, serious guy, where back when it was completely illegal to be a Christian missionary in China, he was chased by the Red Army, the Chinese Communist Red Army, you know, with guns, and his life was threatened. Serious dude, super smart dude. Pastor Talbot Ronning. He came to our church as a part-time retired pastor for a while. You remember
Yep,
Pastor Ronning, right,
I do.
Sally?
Very
you know him
well.
better than I do. He was there
Very
before
well.
we moved
and
there.
his wife.
And his wife, yep. And they were just wonderful. And they would have people over to their house for Chinese dinners that they would make, you know, from scratch and the whole thing. And he was just a goofball. He was a fun-loving guy. His favorite verse in the Bible was, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And he would repeat that over and over. He'd sing it from the pulpit.
Yes.
"The joy of the Lord is my strength."
Yes,
and he
I
just
can
kind of
hear it.
keep repeating
Nice.
it. Well, one time, some of the women from the Altar Guild, kind of like, think Church Lady from SNL, the Dana Carvey character, they were having none of it. And so they kind of went after him. And I was acolyting that day. I was lighting the candles, the altar boy. And they went after him and said, "What is your deal? You should not be goofing around so much. This is worship. This is serious business." And without missing a beat, Pastor Ronning lovingly, with all the grace anybody could muster, looks at these women and says, "In this church, we take God seriously, not ourselves." And I think that is such an important transferable principle. I've never forgotten that, obviously. I was just a kid when I heard it, and I've carried it with me my whole life and my whole ministry is we better take God seriously.
Yes.
So we're not going to be flippant about this stuff. But at the same time, we can't take ourselves seriously because it starts to tip things upside down in a way that isn't healthy for the church. We don't save anybody, God does. And so we want to point people to Him, and we want to give God excellence. We want to do our best, but it's got to be, there has to be some room for fun. There has to be some room for joy. And we're going to take a deeper look into all those things.
Yes.
Emily, you got some questions.
I sure do. Here we go.
Hey, so, hey, why don't we just jump right in? Anybody got any questions?
First question: how do Christians lose track of fun and develop a reputation of grumpiness?
Church people, followers of Jesus, who hear our Lord say to us, "The whole point of me coming into this world is to put my joy in you and to make that joy complete." That's what the Gospels say. that we turn that around and it becomes this thing where, boy, church people have developed a reputation for being the grumpiest people on planet Earth because we're just killjoys. We lose our fun. What is it that you guys see on that?
Well, sometimes I think that people mistake their seriousness and think that it equates their depth of their faith. And I don't think that really is the case. I mean, I think that sometimes people think that, you can't be fun and respectful at the same time, when I totally think you can. In fact, if you're going to be respectful, it means that you're trusting someone. And I don't think you can have fun unless you're in a trusting environment or unless you trust someone. And so I think that sometimes, then you'll have people might look down on people having fun and laughing in church or even clapping for an offering or something like that. And so then you don't feel welcome and a lot of fun people may leave. And then all that's left are sometimes the grumpy people. And that's not very fun.
On that note, it's interesting. We've done this. We've used this tool, this personality test called the Color Code at Hope with our staff before many times. And so you guys have been on staff, Emily and Mark, for quite a while, so you've probably gone through it 2 or 3 cycles. And I know what color you are, young man. That you actually set records on our staff, I think, for what is your color called?
It's yellow. It's the fun color. It was pretty much all yellow, and I had like 1 or 2 red, which is the like ordery type A type person. And there's blue and white also. Blue is more like relational. Everybody, let's have feelings, and white's everybody get along. And then yellow's just we want to make it fun at all costs.
The color code whites. You nailed it. The peacemakers, the reds are the type A's, and truth is important to us. And the blues are intimacy and want to always get in groups and break it down. And the yellows, you. And you, Sally, what color code, Emily?
Oh, I'm very red.
I thought so.
Red.
Which is why you're such a good leader.
Yes.
A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, some of the best leaders have that tendency, that trait.
And here's what I'll say we try to do, recognizing the strengths of each of those color personality types, is when we're planning a big event, we need somebody like a red, but we say get the yellows, bring them to the table, because we want the fun ideas to draw people in.
If every decision was made around here just by people who are the type A's, we would never have any fun.
Right.
It wouldn't be effective.
Right.
Because it's not attractive.
Right.
It would be practical. It would be, organized, and it would be all lined up, but it wouldn't be any fun. My personality test comes out 50-50. I'm half red, half yellow, which is a really interesting combination. But my older brother's a pastor in California. He and I were leading a family camp week at a Bible camp. This is years ago. And we did this experiment. We did the color code test on everybody who was there. So there's like 200 adults who were there at family camp this week. And we went through it, and then we broke it down. And this is mostly Lutherans. Blue was by far the biggest group, half. Probably 100 of the 200 adults were blues. Relationships, let's get into smaller groups, let's connect. Then there was kind of an even distribution between white and red, the peacemakers and the type A type people. And there were, I think, 3 yellows. You were one of them, Sally.
Yeah, there were not many of us. We were very small. And we had at the end, we had to give like a presentation of what we talked about. And so we, of course, used the congas and we used the guitar. And so we actually
brought the fun.
Yes.
You were the only ones who used the congas.
We performed it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was kind of fun.
It was fun. But it was very telling for me because it reminded my brother and I, we both made this comment. The church has pushed out the yellows. We don't make room enough for the fun people, because if you survey Americans, it's about 25% each. Who come out with that personality trait. But in the church, there's very, very few fun people left because they said, well, I guess there isn't any room for me. So Hope is different. We're kind of the outlier.
Yes.
Hope has always been the kind of church that is filled with fun people, or at least it reflects the American population that way. And I think that's important. Not only did Jesus say, I came to put my joy in you to make it complete, but that joy is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit in Galatians 5:22. It's love, and then the second, right after love, is joy. That's the goal. The Apostle Paul says, writing from the dirt floor of a prison cell awaiting his execution, of all the things that I could write to you right now, rejoice with me, have joy. Even though his whole life has fallen apart, joy that we can get in Jesus Christ allows us to still have a full life even when everything's falling apart. That's a powerful gift, and it's not to be minimized. I think too many Christians and too many churches minimize joy, and it's just not biblical.
Well, they get too focused on the tradition of things and don't realize that tradition can be fun.
Yeah.
But when you make it so much about the order of things and having to do things the right way, you can lose the fun.
Sure.
And I grew up in a great church in my junior high and senior high years where you had a pastor that really led with fun.
Yes.
And then I've served in a couple churches that were a little bit different, but not bad. They just were different. Then when I came here, that was very obvious early on because of how creative you all had to be in being church in a variety of different ways that this was going to be fun. Because take God seriously, but not ourselves. You've said that all the time. And when I get to be a character for VBS, we get to spend 2 weeks where all we do is completely be idiots for Jesus in so many cool ways. And that's attractive to people. People want to see the church very fun. And kids especially, when I did student ministry, they needed to see that we were not afraid to be fools.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which leads us right into our next question.
Yeah, a good clarifier for people, I think, is didn't Jesus frown upon parties, celebrations, and wasting time on frivolous things like the pursuit of joy?
No, in addition to the things that we've already talked about, his first miracle, John chapter 2.
Love it.
He shows up. They run out of wine at the wedding, and weddings back then were week-long celebrations. So you run out of wine on day 2, you've offended your entire community. The people that you invited to come here. It was a major social faux pas. It was a huge problem. And so it wasn't just, oh gosh, we want to keep the party going for the sake of the party. It was this is really awkward on every level whatsoever. So what does Jesus do? He takes the water, turns it into wine, his first miracle, because he wanted, among other things, to keep the party going. He wanted the people he loved, the people he was in community with, and the people his mother Mary was in community with, in this case. He wanted them to continue to have fun. Fun is underrated.
Well, and I often, when I hear that story, there's a part of my brain that likes to go to the part that they don't tell you. And I make it up because I can, and it's not in scripture, so please don't take this as scriptural. But
yeah, this is Mark Brandt, not the word of the Lord. So Jesus extends the party. I have to think the party, like the people that were putting it on were like, hey, Jesus, seriously, Uncle Ted was about ready to go home. We were ready for him to go home, and you just brought out the best wine. So now he's going to stick around even longer. But that's Jesus. He wanted the party to go on. Yeah, and he's wanted...
Well, and I think it's funny because it was in Cana where the wedding was.
Yeah.
And Mike and I have been to Cana, and I think it's so funny because it's full of tons of wedding chapels. So that party has never stopped. It's gone on for years.
Everybody wants to have that kind of wedding party, I guess.
Yes. Quite the reputation.
That points us right to our next one.
Yeah. How did God use fun to turn around Lutheran Church of Hope right from the start?
Sally, why don't you go first on this one?
Okay. Well, I think obviously we have never taken ourselves too seriously, but we take God very seriously. But I think one of the major turning points was back in 92. No, it couldn't have been 92 because we weren't here in 92. It was in 93. And all of a sudden we got to worship at Living History Farms. And the neat thing about that is, who doesn't want to go worship in a little old-fashioned little church in an old-fashioned town? If you don't live in Iowa, Living History Farms is kind of a museum that you can go to. And so people would be coming, to the small, tiny church, and you'd be walking up little wood planks to go to through a little old-fashioned town to go to church. But if it was really windy or cold, because it is most of the year here in Iowa anyway, we had so many people with minivans, and so people would drive down with their minivan because it was too far to walk in the cold, and people were just friendly from day one. And so it was just so exciting. We're like, oh, here come more people. Let's get another minivan down there. And seriously, I really believe that we have never lost that feeling. Still to this day, when people open up the door to walk into this building, everyone's excited because they're like, yay, because the whole purpose is to come and get to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's just awesome. Yeah.
As you tell that, it just reminds me of so many things. That church building at Living History Farms, which is like this outdoor living farm museum to help everybody remember how Iowans used to farm. The chapel that was built there in honor of the Pope. Pope John Paul II came to Des Moines back in 1979, I think it was.
He flew over me. Well, I watched the helicopter go over.
In Indianola?
No, actually, I was in Des Moines at the time.
Wow.
Yep, hanging off my dad.
That's as close as you got?
Yep, he flew over top.
Did he wave?
No, I waved at him, though.
That's good.
So.
Nice. That's fun.
Absolutely.
See, we're right on topic. Back when we were still in that building, we decided we'd have VBS, even though we had maybe 2 or 3 kids in the whole church.
Oh, wow.
And we thought, well, we're going to have to invite people who don't come to this church or any church, or we're not going to really have much of a VBS. It's going to be really difficult. So we went door to door. We, handed out flyers, and I think something like 50 or 60 kids showed up. And
Which is incredible.
It's incredible when you think about it.
And
so you have
where
2 or
we
3
were
kids in the
located,
church. What's that, Sally?
And from where we were located, so far outside the neighborhood,
Absolutely. So you've got this small church, and now you've got this. More kids were coming to VBS than we had showing up on Sundays for sure, for worship. And so we looked at that and we're like, well, we better make this good, or they're going to come once and they'll never come back. So we, make phone calls and all our connections. And I think the theme that year was creation.
it was a farm theme.
A farm theme. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we got some little pigs and we got some little sheep, and we brought them in. The kids just loved it. And then they invited their friends. I think by the end of the week, we had something like 75 or 80 kids at VBS.
Wow.
And it was on. And there again, God's teaching us. Look, if it's fun, they'll come. And if they come, you can make disciples. You can build a church on that. And so no apologies for doing whatever it is that we possibly can to get people to come into a place where they can hear a life-changing word.
Speaking of VBS, our next question. Why does Hope go to all the trouble of creating original lyrics and choreographed dance moves for VBS songs every year? So for the people who don't know, Sally, you and your team take popular songs that you might hear on the radio and totally transform them. Why?
Because we've seen what happens when you don't. Because really we've had some music before that before we started doing this that just we didn't even like it. It just didn't relate to the kids. It was a new tune. Nobody could figure out the tune, plus put the words on there, and it just didn't work. So this way, if it's a familiar or / easy song to learn, as far as melody goes, pop the words in there. The kids are going to know it. If it's upbeat, we're lucky because on the team, there's a lot of us who've, are either have done dance team or taught fitness classes or whatever, and you kind of learn, unfortunately, in front of a large group of people, what works and what doesn't work. I mean, the beats per minute does matter. And so we've just kind of taken those and learned that. I learned a long time ago, I was looking for some fun music to play with the kids back when we were at Living History Farms and soon after that. And I started with some nursery rhyme songs with the words changed. And found it that the kids really picked up to that. And so as soon as they started picking up on that, we just kind of went from there. And here we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, you run the whole program. You run the entire ministry at Vacation Bible School, and you've done that for a long time now. What's your perspective on this? I mean, you guys have the steering meetings and talk about strategies. How does fun come into that?
Yeah. To make VBS, we want to do whatever we can to relate to the kids. And so one of the ways that the music being done this way is so transformational is it does relate to their world. And now I see it in a whole new perspective because my daughter Ella turned 7. Oh. And so whether I like it or not, she knows the radio songs from school or from an iPad or from friends. And the most fascinating thing this year is now that she can read, I realize she knows those lyrics whether I want her to or not. And the beauty of the VBS songs in the way that we do it and the way your team transforms the lyrics into these words, singing praises to God, is that those kids are then singing those words. And so everyone kind of sees the power of music. We all have tunes in our head or ones that we remember from decades ago or from today. And so the beauty of taking songs that we already know and changing the lyrics so they're pointing kids to God is just, you can't really understand the impact it has on VBS.
I just did it in the store the other day. Pentecost. Yeah. That song was playing in the store, and I did, without involuntarily, my body just went Pentecost because it just gets so ingrained in you.
And you take specific Bible stories, and you're telling the Bible story through the song. Yeah. You take things like the books of the Bible. We've done Old New Testaments, all of it. And all of a sudden, those kids have just memorized the books of the Bible without even realizing it. If I sat them down instead and said, I need you to memorize this list, there's no way that they're going to do it. Or at least have fun doing it.
Right. For sure. We're redeeming pop music. We're taking the popular music of our day, and we're putting Bible-based lyrics on them. We're sometimes putting Bible verses on them. So
Yes.
kids are actually memorizing the Bible so that when they grow up and they go to a college football game and they're playing this tune that we played in VBS, they're going to think of those Bible verses. They, like you just said, Mark,
absolutely.
you're going to go back
Yeah.
and you're going to have memorized scripture without even really knowing it. Although I think they know it. I think the kids are pretty smart. They realize what they're getting. This is a very Lutheran thing too. Legend has it that Martin Luther, the guy who started the whole Protestant Reformation, took the popular music of his day that he would hear in the taverns on Saturday night, invite that band to show up on Sunday, play the same tune, and between Saturday night at the tavern and Sunday morning at worship, he would rewrite the lyrics to the tune, so it wasn't just some kind of meaningless lyrical kind of song, but he would put Bible-based verses and lyrics onto those same tunes, and that's all we're doing here. We're taking the popular music of our day and we're redeeming it. We're giving it a new life, a second chance to be used for God's glory.
Yeah, and just so that it's not mistaken that we only do just like so many, high beats per minute for songs. We always do a slow song too.
Yeah.
And years ago, we kind of decided kids just don't want to stand there and sing a slow song. So we came up with the idea to put sign language to it. So the kids, we call it the sign language prayer song every year. And so that's really it's really deep and meaningful and causes a few tears sometimes too.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Those
All
are
of it.
powerful.
Yeah. Next question. Shouldn't a church focus more on Christian learning than fun?
This one I'm just going to do real quick, and then we'll just move on to the next one because the answer is simple. It's both. It's not either or. And what's more important? Learning. Of course it is. But as we've said in so many different ways already, if it's fun, the kids will come. If the kids will come, we have a chance to make disciples out of them. We have a chance to fulfill the Great Commission that Jesus has given to them. We have a chance to live out the Great Commandment, to love these kids enough to provide an environment for them where they're going to want to come. We have found over and over and over again that in this, before we ever came to Hope, Sally and I served on internship and in other places. And you learn pretty quick that if it isn't fun, nobody's going to come, or if they do come and they're forced to come, they're not going to learn. They just can't wait to get out of there. They're just counting the minutes. If it's fun, they want to come, they invite their friends, and then God can move. So yes, it is both. We do the fun for the sake of learning. There's a method to our madness. It's not fun for the sake of fun, just as an end goal all by itself. Although, again, I don't want to minimize joy, the joy that Jesus talks about. But it's fun for the sake of us carrying out our mission.
Yeah. How does the fun factor into Hope's mission, including the development of local sites and digital outreach?
All right, Bishop.
Oh, gosh.
Let's go. And I call Mark Bishop because he oversees so many different local sites here at Hope. Explain what that is.
So for those of you that maybe don't know, a local site is a group of folks that don't live near one of our campuses that want to worship with us. They've probably either grown up here at Hope or they have been worshiping with us online and they just don't want to continue to do that on their own, which I respect a lot. In fact, anybody that does online ministry that doesn't say it should move you to an in-person experience is probably not doing it right. We really need to move people into that in-person. And so some folks that were worshiping online said, what if we got together and started to worship? And we put it up on a screen. I mean, it's no different than the overflow spaces that we have here at a major, garage door services, Christmas Eve and Easter. But it really started from that concept because people wanted to gather together for worship with their friends. So they became like watch parties. And that grew into becoming local sites, which are those little churches that are volunteer-led. And they're a ton of fun. And here's what the first time we did this in a small town, Forest City, where I knew we had something. I showed up to hang out with them, and this is where the fun comes in. The first song starts, and I've not ever seen it in action. And they stand up, and they start singing out loud. And I'm thinking, nobody can hear you other than yourselves. Nobody hears you. You're just doing this. And that was great. And I'm like, this is fascinating. They were clapping. And then the offering song happened. So and I can't remember who did the song or what it was, but I do remember at the end of it, the folks in Forest City clapped. And my cynical fun brain said, they can't hear you. But at the same time, how compelling was it of a moment for them to engage in that way. That told me we're up to something here. This is fun.
Wow, I never thought of that about that. The applause isn't just for the it isn't just for the people who are maybe
God's
bringing the
doing
music.
something cool.
It's always for the glory of God, isn't
absolutely.
it? We're praising God for the moment we just got to share. And even if it's just the community around you gets to hear that, it's absolutely worthy.
So the word got out that we were doing this. It was kind of like the best kept secret in town for the longest time, where Forest City was doing this. Didn't quite know what it was yet, but I was having a lot of fun with it. And then a gentleman from Ames heard we were doing this, and he kind of pushed that a little bit more and said, I would love to see us do this in Ames. And so that just, spiraled into a really cool development there. And now we've started 7, there's currently 7 different sites. We've launched 9 total over the years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And all of those local sites, not one of them did you like sit in your office and have some master strategy plan to start here, and here. It's they
come to us.
They come to us. They're excited about it, and they want to be church together. And so we just try to facilitate and foster that. It's really exciting. And in some cases, not all, it's not the goal necessarily, but in some cases, those local sites have grown up like Ames to become a campus. And we have a couple more with high potential for that right now as well. It's really exciting.
So why is it so important for Christians to embrace fun and reclaim our calling as the life of the party?
All right, so I'm going to call this the deeper dive because we're going to go all the way down. I want to hear from everybody on this one. The reason it's so important for Christians to embrace fun and reclaim our calling as the life of the party is Jesus says at the very beginning of his Sermon on the Mount, "You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world." And a lot of people try to just interpret that in, classical kinds of ways, but let's just take it for what those words are. Salt brings flavor to things that have no flavor. You're the flavor. You're supposed to be the flavor. You're supposed to be the spice of life. You're supposed to be the spice of the party. And this fits perfectly in with some of the other verses we've referenced already in this episode about Jesus wanting to bring joy to us, about Paul saying when it's all said and done, really one of the greatest gifts you have is joy. It's one of the top fruits of the Holy Spirit. You're the salt, you're the flavor, and you're the light. Right now outside, people are like, "Oh, finally. Isn't this great?" And why are they excited? Because the sun's out, right? The light is shining. It's really exciting. That's who we are. That's who we're supposed to be. When we go hang out with a group of people, Christians and non-Christians, we're supposed to be the life of the party. We're supposed to be the ones who have the security, the assurance. And that doesn't mean we're supposed to be the ones that put the lampshades on our heads and completely lose control. It means that we're called to be who we are, but to walk with such a confidence in our faith that we don't have to worry so much about, I got to impress these people and I got to make sure that everybody likes me and I got to worry about all these insecure things. We have a security, we have a confidence, and so we have a joy that comes with that. We're salt, we're light, we're joy.
Why would someone want to know Jesus if all the Jesus followers look grumpy all the time?
Amen, sister. Preach
don't
it.
know.
Yeah, it's like the communion walk, I like to call it, where you're just like,
It looks like somebody took something.
yeah, that's right. It looks like they're having the worst day ever. You were just given a free ticket to heaven for crying out loud. I mean, there was an 8th grade girl in confirmation class when I was at the church we were at right out of seminary before we came to Hope. Her name is Lana. She's brilliant. Genius IQ, and she raised her hand one time when I was teaching on communion. She goes, "If that's true, why aren't people dancing when they go back to the pews in this church?" So I preached that Sunday, and one of the women in our church who'd been in that church for her whole life since she's a little kid, and now she's in her 80s, started dancing on her way back to the pew. I was just like, "Way to go, sister! That's it." It's important for us to do this, to embrace fun as Christians, because it's who we are. And if we don't do it, we're missing a big part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ, and that'd be a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I think the world's hungry for it, though, too.
Oh,
they really are.
Yes.
I mean, because they're searching for it in a variety of different ways that'll never last.
Yeah.
And I think if we as the church can come alongside them and show them that following Jesus can be fun, I think that's the real chance to help people, not only just get to know a fun church, but also get to know God. I mean, that's the big thing, is that we're wanting to point people back to God. One of my favorite stories, really quickly, was from the Old Testament when David came back from a big battle.
Yes.
And he gets into his ephod, which you can look up what that is. I'm not going to tell you. But
It's not much.
No, it's not much. But he's dancing around, and all the grumpy people were saying, David, knock it off. You're embarrassing us. What are you doing? And he said, hey, I'll get even more undignified because of what God is doing.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the picture and the glimpse of what it should look like when God is doing cool things. Not saying there isn't a time for being serious, but
There's
Exactly.
time and season for everything.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just fun doesn't necessarily just mean like, oh, we're going to give you candy and gum if you come to church. It's not that or a prize or anything like that. It's just when you come in and you really celebrate the joy of Jesus, that's fun. That is true fun. And I've had so many people stop me, like out at the store and things like that, or at the airport, different places I've been. And they're just like, I came to church and I was just in such a bad mood. I didn't really want to go. And when I left, I was filled with the Spirit and just... I was so happy. And they're like, I haven't felt that way in a really long time. So it's real.
And I'm not just saying this because you're my wife. That was like a total mic drop moment for me when you were talking about that. What is the source of our joy? So many people, Mark, you talked about it. Emily, we've all been talking about it. As humans, of course, we long for laughter and smiles and joy and happy days and all those things. Great. What's your source? Where are you going to find it? Because like you just said, Sally, if your source is Jesus, we're not just handing out candy and gum or whatever for the sake of the fun itself. We're doing it so that and it's not just kids. We're doing it so adults. We're doing it so that one of the oldest women in our church family out of seminary is dancing back to her pew after communion. We're doing this so people don't miss out on life.
Yeah.
So that we don't miss out on the opportunity we have. If the source of our joy is Jesus, wow, nothing can touch it because nothing can touch that relationship we have with Jesus Christ. Now it's not about I'm having a good day or I'm having a bad day or things are going okay or things aren't going okay. Now it's about I'm in a relationship of faith with Jesus Christ. You can't take my joy. You cannot take it. There's no way. It's untouchable in that sense when it's rooted that deep, when the source is that strong.
Yeah.
So
that's good news.
it is really good
Very
news.
good news.
Emily, it's good news, but it's a little bittersweet right now, isn't it?
I know it. This is our season finale.
This is it. I want to say thank you to you. I mean, you've been here for all 20 episodes. Thanks to our guests, of course,
Yes.
too, Mark and Sally today. And thanks a ton to our production crew.
Yeah.
To Chris New, Parker and Matthew. We can see Chris. We cannot see Parker and Matthew. To our communications team, Kelsey's here today putting some things together. To everybody who makes this possible. Michelle Bowen had a lot to do with getting this whole thing set up. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And then I want to say thank you to all the listeners, to everybody who tunes in so faithfully. We appreciate it. We appreciate that you are pulling up a chair and sitting down with us and having these conversations that hopefully hang out at the intersection between faith and daily life. And it's an honor. That's how I feel about it.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Well
There you
said.
go. It has
been.
Well, and on that note, I don't think there'd be a better note to close on. Thank you, and thanks to all of you. Most of all, thanks to God for giving us this opportunity and for giving us a source of joy that nothing else can touch. We will see you at worship, and Pastor Mike Drop will be back for season 4, but we need to take a little rest.
And have some fun.
Have some fun. We'll see you then. But we've got like 90 episodes out there, so you can always go back and find the ones that are your favorites and share them with friends. God bless you all.
Thanks for joining us today. Please click like, share it with a friend, and subscribe so we can see you next time.